Thank you so much. It's I would be remiss without mentioning with some of the comments just shared that we have heard Native governments across this country stand up against the Keystone XL pipeline, the Dakota Access pipeline, that stood up against being poisoned by industry and having their lands defiled. And we see members of Congress also try to overturn the will of people here. This is not something that is new. And it speaks to the deep historical harm that the United States government and history of the United States government has with Native people, which is a deeper issue that we all must address. And in fact, I would like to dig into the record of oil and gas companies operating in this area. Ms. Ashland, in Mr. Atencio's written testimony, he mentions that your company, Enduring Resources, spilled over 40,000 gallons of toxic fracking slurry mixed with crude oil onto his family's allotment near Chaco Canyon. Do you dispute this fact?
Enduring Resources has informed me that the spill did not occur on Mr. Atencio's allotment. It did occur. There was a spill in 2019. It was about 300 barrels of oil and about 1,000 barrels of water. It was cleaned up immediately, and it was...
So the spill did occur of 40,000?
The spill occurred. It was in the middle of February, and it was resulted from a frozen pipe.
But you dispute that it touched Mr. Atencio's allotment?
I've been told that it did not.
Mr. Atencio, was this spill on your allotment?
Yes, my father's allotment.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ashland, did Enduring Resources pay any fines for impacts to land or water from that spill? Just simple yes or no?
No.
No. So the company did not pay any fines for the impact of that spill. Mr. Atencio, did your family or your chapter ever hear at all from Enduring Resources about this spill?
Ranking member, no, we have yet to receive any formal response from Enduring Resources.
And I think this is something that speaks to a pattern that we have seen in front of this committee. To be clear, the kinds of pollution from that spill and a spill of that magnitude is profound, with highly noxious, hazardous air pollutants and methane that either leak inadvertently or are vented or flared by operators. I have seen it in person. I have seen families burn when they breathe in some of this air. And in fact, so much methane spills out of industrial vents in the region that the methane cloud over New Mexico is now visible from space. We see this, and it happens not just in this instance, but in many others where I have brought this point in front of this committee that people deserve to know if they are being poisoned, whether it's by accident or whether it's by any other process. And they are not being informed. They are not being told. The CDC also tells us that exposure to these pollutants can cause significant long-term health damage. Mr. Atencio, since the 2019 spill, have Enduring Resources or other oil and gas companies taken any steps to notify nearby communities of methane leaks, oil spills, or other incidents?
No.
And as Enduring Resources started building the infrastructure necessary to produce fossil fuels in the community, were you ever informed of the risk associated with these plants?
No.
Now, one thing I do want to speak to is the very real economic harm and injustice associated with this issue. Because Native people and Indigenous communities have been abused and have not been respected. And in stripping everything away, we now are in an economic hostage situation where people feel like the only opportunity and that the only source is to acquiesce to oil and gas. And the answer to that is not to revert back, in my view, not to revert back to that, but to invest and reinvest in these communities, particularly where there is harm being done, particularly where there is disinvestment being done. And if families are being impacted in these allotments, they deserve economic restitution. And President Nygren, I understand that the Navajo Nation has taken a position on the 10-mile withdrawal, but that aside, are there other steps the federal government can take to better support the Navajo Nation through an energy transition?
Thank you, Honorable Cortez. I really appreciate that question. One of the things I want to say is I was hoping that those discussions were going to happen this year. Prior to, I did not even know about the announcement or anything from the secretary, but my hope was that we were going to have these discussions so that we can come up with a collective solution, because representing in Arizona, we had probably the biggest, cleanest coal-fired plant, NGS, that was decommissioned and now doesn't exist anymore. The promise was solar fields down the road, but now nothing exists. And people are out of jobs. There's no royalties, there's no taxes. So I truly agree with having a transition plan that's equitable. And that plan was never presented. And to me, it was just a decision that was made. And that was one of the reasons why we completely opposed this, was there was no compromise. There was no alternative forms of how can we make this community thrive, alternative forms of energy. So that wasn't presented. So that was one of the reasons why the Navajo Nation Council issued their resolution, and I made that statement, was how do we help these people? Because as the Navajo Nation president, the government wasn't affected. It was less than 1% of those royalties come to the Navajo Nation. So to me as the president, I wasn't affected. But to the allottees, they felt like they were hit with a trash can and I was splashed with water. So that's where I completely agree with you, is that we gotta think about the people that are in those tough situations, that have to make those tough scenarios. Is how do we open the doors so that they can seek other alternative forms of funding? So thank you for asking that.
Thank you, President Nygren. And my hope is that we can work together as a committee to address some of these injustices, including considering solar royalties for some of these communities. Thank you.